Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Vikings Season 4, Episode 11, The Outsider. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Vikings, so I'll have to give a spoiler warning for Vikings up to Season 4, Episode 11. If you haven't seen up to this point, you may not want to watch this video, otherwise some things may be spoiled for you. So Vikings is finally back. So when I heard that they were trying a different format this year by having 20 episodes a season instead of 10, I thought, wow, that sounds great. Should be interesting. What I didn't know at the time was that there'd be a 7-month break between the first 10 episodes and the next 10. So honestly, I think it's a bit ridiculous to call this all one season. It's counter to the whole meaning of seasons. I mean, if you think about it, some shows only have like a 4-month break between different seasons. This show had a 7-month break, so really it should be called Season 5. But, we'll just call it 4.5. I'm not sure how long of a break there will be between seasons 4 and 5, which, is said to follow a similar format, but it should be more than 7 months, although, otherwise it will be considered all one season. Either way, it doesn't look like the next season will start in February, as it usually does, as Season 4 will be just ending around then. So getting into the actual content of the episode itself, at the end of the last episode, there was a big time jump where Ragnar's children all grew up and Bjorn had taken over the mantle of running the kingdom as Ragnar disappeared, but Ragnar is still technically king. So the episode begins where the last one left off with him screaming, "Who wants to be king?" Which was a pretty intense scene, but ultimately it teetered out in a way that was a bit anticlimactic, as it just ended with him hugging his children. So Bjorn seems rather dubious of his father's return, and he reveals what he knows of England, including that Ragnar has a son there named Magnus, and Ragnar states his intentions about wanting to return there, but no one is interested. So this episode is basically about Ragnar going to all the various people who he once knew, asking who wants to go to England with him. He asks his sons, he asks Floki, he asks Lagertha. None of them are interested. It was interesting seeing him reunite with Floki, as there was a lot of bad blood between them in the first half of the season after Ragnar had tortured him, but all that seemed totally forgotten now, as Floki expressed nothing but admiration for him. And the way it ended with Ragnar saying that he loved him and Floki calling out after him, screaming, "I love you too," that was actually quite touching. But what was more telling was when Ragnar met with Lagertha, and it's obvious he still loves her, or rather he loves her once again, and she reciprocates his feelings in a way, as she indicates she still loves him, but she still doesn't want to be with him, and she doesn't want to go to England with him. And it was interesting listening to Lagertha talk to her new lover, Astrid, about Ragnar, as she expresses love for him as well. So Ragnar is very loved and admired by everyone he meets, and yet still completely abandoned, and no one wants to fight with him anymore. So in despair, he tries to hang himself, which I suppose illustrates how difficult it was to see all those he loved who still love him, but all of them abandoned him anyway. However, he does finally find a travel companion with Ivar, and the scene the two of them had together was very nice, and it was interesting how when Ragnar assumed he would go, Ivar was just like, "I want you to ask me like you asked my brothers," and Ragnar only gets out his name before Ivar interrupts and says, "Of course I'll go with you." That was a nice scene. It showed that Ivar doesn't want to be taken for granted because of his handicap, but that he loves Ragnar more than his brothers do. This, of course, was apparent in the earlier scene when Ivar's brothers were talking about how Ragnar doesn't have favor with the gods anymore and no one loves him anymore. And Ivar called them bastards that don't deserve to be Ragnar's sons. So we meet Ragnar's sons in this episode, as we have barely seen them as adults. They seem to have a nice little group and a good little kinship. They treat Ivar equally despite his handicap, but of course they don't feel as kindly to Ragnar as he does. And there seems to be quite a bit of a rivalry between Sigurd and Ivar, as Sigurd seemed to not like him very much, which was most evident in the weapon training montage, which was quite a little interesting scene, as it showed that Ivar was just as capable as his brothers, perhaps more so, and Sigurd didn't seem to appreciate that. This doesn't surprise me, as Sigurd was always a bit of a bastard as a child. Doesn't surprise me that he would remain so as an adult. So then we get this very strange sequence with this female slave, as all of Ivar's brothers have sex with her one by one as Ivar watches. This was a bit strange, and we then find out that, when they find out that they all bedded her, they don't seem to care. But I guess that just goes to show the type of culture that they lived in. But then Ivar expresses his desires to want to have sex with her too, so they make it happen. But when he can't perform, he threatens to kill her so that the others don't find out. And that is quite a despicable thing to say, even if he doesn't follow through with it. But that's what I love about this show, that it doesn't try to whitewash these characters and portray them as heroic good guys. As Vikings were known mostly as brutal killers, they had a warrior-like culture, and thus would do many things that would be unacceptable through the eyes of our modern-day culture. But at the same time, it doesn't glorify this despicable behavior either, but it shows it as plain and simple as it was. Plus, I liked her response that to kill her would be cowardly, because whether or not he can have sex with her doesn't ultimately matter, and I think that gets to the heart of Ivar's character story in this episode, as he seemed to mind his handicap more than his brothers, who are able to look past it more easily than he was, and I think this episode is about him learning to look beyond it as well. So Bjorn turns down Ragnar because he has plans to sail to the Mediterranean to raid Rome and places that he found on the map that he got from Paris. And so, almost everyone is set on these plans, and they're planning on traveling with Bjorn, and so they don't really care much for Ragnar's plans to go to England. This does surprise me that they wouldn't feel the need to get revenge on Wessex for betraying them and wiping out their peaceful settlement, but it seems some are interested. Ivar was the first to join Ragnar, but I hope he isn't the last, as Ragnar will need a sizable force indeed if he means to take on King Ekbark, who has grown quite powerful. So it looks like a very strong possibility that the show is leading us to a point where Ragnar won't be around anymore, but that doesn't mean the show will end. I think they are setting things up so that the show can switch focus to Ragnar's sons. I heard some others express they hated this idea and thought it sounded terrible, but I quite like it, and I think it could work. For one, I like the character of Bjorn, and I think he could carry the show, and Ivar has a lot of potential to be a very interesting character too. I always liked the character of Ragnar, but not so much that I think he makes the show, and I honestly could see the show going beyond him, and I think it would be just as good. But of course, he is still around now, and I feel he will be for at least the rest of the season, perhaps longer. No one knows for sure, and that's good too. But if the show were ever to switch focus to his sons, I'd be perfectly fine with that as well. So my rating for The Outsider out of 10 is an 8, extremely good. I felt this was a very effective introductory episode that introduces us to the new dynamic after the time jump, seeing the type of men Ragnar's sons grew up to be, and also Ragnar take the journey down memory lane to find he is still very much loved, but people aren't as willing to follow him anymore. So that's it for my review of The Outsider. Be sure to check back here as I will continue to cover various episodes of Vikings. Also be sure to check out my channel for many more videos on shows like Game of Thrones, Star Trek, Humans, The Walking Dead, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all that. And thanks a lot for watching.